Welcome to the Gentleman's Guide to Gaming, and we take a little tangent from the road of RPGs in this video to talk about board games for a while. That's right, board games. We don't talk about them very often on this channel, and that's unfair because I play board games almost as much as I run RPGs. I'm thankfully in a family of a lot of board game players. A lot of my friends play board games, and I play board games for people who I don't run RPGs for. So board games are a massive part of my life, and in fact, while you cannot see it very easily from this view, you would be able to see that the almost entire rest of this room going down that way is board games. You can already see some of them, just a scant few. You can see The Thing here. You can see Bioshock Infinite there. Next to it, there's this War of Mine and Kingmaker. Down here, we've got Frankenstein's Bodies, A Few Acres of Snow, Metal Gear Risk, Colonial Diplomacy, Game of Thrones. There's some detective games directly behind me. Oh, and look at that, more beside me. Metro 2033, Castles of Mad King Ludwig, Britannia, Vampire Prince of the City, The Captain is Dead, Regular Diplomacy, Nemesis, and so forth. All going on, and even more over there. And what I wanted to talk about wasn't just to do shelf porn, but to talk about the games we've been playing, the games we enjoy, because I like to get inspiration. I'm never closed off to the possibility of playing a new game. But I also like to recommend games. So let's do an exchange. I'm going to talk about the top 3 games I have been playing recently, and I would love for you to tell me your top 3 board games that you have been playing recently. For me, the top 3 has to include Go Ahead Punk. Go Ahead Punk, here you go, I'll move to the side so I can do a nice big picture of it. Go Ahead Punk is there we go, Dirty Harry inspired board game, and the company behind it, let's see if I can identify it here, is Next Dimension Games. There we go, Go Ahead Punk. It's a game not dissimilar to Fury of Dracula, if you're familiar with that. You have your map of San Francisco, or an approximate city, and you have a mad gunman on the loose. Half of the table, or most of the table, will be playing cops, while the other player plays the gunman. You have your own maps. The gunman has his own objectives, which generally involve shooting high-profile targets, and it's up to the cops to pick up the killer's trail, track him down, and put an end to his reign of terror before it comes to its, well, natural conclusion. So it's a really fun game. I love the art that has gone into it. I love the inspiration. As a big movie fanatic, having Dirty Harry in board game form is a lot of fun. It makes me think of They Came From, and of course I'm very fond of the They Came From RPGs. I'd be a bit of a hypocrite if I wasn't. And it makes me think of the upcoming They Came From the Danger Zone, or They Came From the Mean Streets, which is in the RPG anthology, quite a lot. But I'm a big fan of Go Ahead Punk. I think it is a lot of fun. It's easy to learn, easy to play. You can get through a game in around an hour, which isn't bad at all. And yeah, I think it is just absolutely superb. I would recommend it to anyone, so do check it out. Next up, I have a game that is sadly out of reach for me right now. It is Vampire the Masquerade Chapters. Now, I've spoken about Chapters before on this channel because I co-wrote it. And Chapters is a board game by Flyos Games. And for me, although I have written for a lot of Vampire the Masquerade board games at this point, including Blood Feud and Heritage and Chapters among more, I think that Chapters is the one that most strongly feels like a Vampire the Masquerade game. Here you go, there's the artwork beside me right now. There's your Vampire the Masquerade Chapters. Chapters is a legacy game and a story game at that takes place in Montreal in the V5 era. So this is post Montreal by Night, though it has lots of links to Montreal by Night if you're a classic Vampire the Masquerade fan, and allows you to play one of a large number of possible characters, each with their own story and each with their own effect on the story that you play. It has a choose-your-own-adventure feel to it, so when you come up against an encounter, you'll have various ways of solving it, and sometimes they will be locked depending on which clan you're playing. So each time you play it is, in theory, different, because you can take different options depending on the character you happen to be. As you go through the game, you unlock further characters to play of the Banu Hakim, the Ministry, and so on. And what's more, you can keep changing your character as the story goes on. Just know that the experience you're putting onto one character does not get transferred onto the other. This is my second run-through of chapters now. We just got done with the first campaign of it, and the player who I've been playing with, this is his first go at one of these kinds of games with a story that basically gets fixed. Enjoyed it so much that he wanted to play it immediately after start again, but with different characters and making different choices. And what's more, making different choices at the point that sometimes the story branches and one scenario will be cut off if you go this way, and then you follow that way, and you won't be able to get back to that. Now he wants to explore the other ones. And not that I wrote the whole thing, but I think it is well written enough that I can enjoy it twice. So I'm really liking the versatility that Chapters has given me. There is an app that I recommend that goes with Chapters now. You can download it. It's very easy to find, and it basically clears up any errata issues you may have with the game. But all in all, I've found it a huge amount of fun, and this person new to board gaming and new to Vampire the Masquerade has as well. It's been a brilliant intro for them to the world of darkness. So that is game number 2. Game number 3. And this one I absolutely cannot put on display on this screen because it is much too epic. It is huge. It is Cthulhu Wars. Cthulhu Wars is, and has been for quite some time, my favourite board game. The pieces are magnificent. They are moulded beautifully. The built-in imbalance of this board game is fantastic. What do I mean by that? Well, in Cthulhu Wars, you play a faction dedicated to one of the Great Old Ones, sometimes 2 Great Old Ones. And each faction has their own agenda, their own objective, their own way to win. In theory, you're just playing for points, but the way you earn those points differs from faction to faction. And there's different ways you can go about obtaining those points. So the Great Cthulhu faction plays differently to the Nyarlathotep faction, which plays different to the Hasta faction, which plays differently to the Yog-Sothoth faction, and so on. But you will find yourself playing differently depending on who your opponents are, because you will act in response to them. So you sometimes end up with a load of miniatures, a load of creatures that you won't deploy one time because they will prove ineffective or less effective against Shub-Niggurath's Dark Young. On one game, you might be trying to steal gates to the outer planes. On another, you're going to be trying to steal cultists. Another, you're just going to be devouring the world. And it differs from every single game. I don't think I've ever played a game of Cthulhu Wars that has felt the same as the last one. Given how many factions are available for this game now, the sheer range of flexibility is huge. As well as the Great Old One miniatures, they are huge too. In fact, I've got Sathagwa up here. There's Sathagwa. He is a big old toad, that's for sure. Sort of toad-like gorilla, warty thing. This is the glow-in-the-dark Sathagwa, I believe. And I think I've got my glow-in-the-dark Cthulhu up there as well. There we go. Yeah, these occupy the board, and they certainly make a statement when you use them in the game. When you go boom, it does make the cultists, who are about that size, kind of freeze in comparison. So Cthulhu Wars is an undertaking because the pieces are so big, the boxes are pretty big as well. But it is a game I would not hesitate to recommend because it is beautiful. It plays brilliantly, it's smooth, it is not broken despite the imbalance. It is just a fantastic game, and I recommend anyone check it out. Now, if you... Oh, and I'm going to say one more thing about Cthulhu Wars. Alliances. I mentioned diplomacy in my last video about Steam Wars and how much I love the diplomacy board game. Cthulhu Wars is runs by that same objective of you will be allied with someone for as long as it is convenient to you. And when you betray them, it can lead to some hurt feelings. But this game plays so much faster than a game of diplomacy, which can take days, where Go Ahead Punk will generally take an hour to an hour and a half. Chapters will typically take around an hour and a half to play through a chapter. Cthulhu Wars is done most of the time within about an hour. But all of these games, I would say, max out about an hour and a half in length, which for me is optimal for a board game. It means you can get 2 scenarios in or 2 games in one evening, and there's no real stress. I love games like Gloomhaven as well. I love games like, I don't know... There's lots of games I love. Vampire the Masquerade Heritage as well, for that matter. But when a board game requires me to spend about 2 hours or 3 hours, and an hour of that is set up, it can slow me down. It can kill my enthusiasm on that evening. These 3 games are all really easy to set up. So yeah, I would love to hear your recommendations. What games have you been playing? What would you recommend? See if you can come up with 3. I would love to read about them below. Let me know your thoughts. Thank you very much for watching.